Welcome everyone to the Tesla Beat number 59. So starting to get close to 60. Thank you all for tuning in. We are so happy to be here this week. And as we all know, there is never a dull moment in the Tesla world. We have Tesla earnings coming up next week. So big expectations from there. We have a lot of updates that we're going to get to you live today. So obviously, thank you, Jeff, Alexandra, and Joe for being here again this week. How are you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
Ready and so excited for next week's X Takeover.
Yeah, it's here. It's crazy. We are literally a week away from beginning festivities. The light show, the ride and drive, the meetup at Tesla's new service and sales center in San Luis Obispo. So it's going to be amazing. But we'll save that for the end. So let's jump into it. We are at around $243. This is year to date. I only showed one day, but we are about 2% down from year to date. So it has had a huge rally in the past month, as you have probably been watching. But yeah, so I think, this is kind of the update I think we were all kind of waiting for. Elon, as with everything, right? I mean, I think there's been some insane, just like fake news in the past week about random events. But this is the one we were all waiting for Elon to comment on. One thing I've learned being in this community now 6 years is I try my best not to, what's the word? I try best not to any rumors that are happening. I try not to put them out.
Don't leak.
Yeah, leak. Exactly. So leak, or if there's anything suggestive thoughts, I try not to. I try to wait for Tesla to comment, or more specifically, we know any big things Elon will comment on. So this was a big one, and what I'm specifically talking about is we were all waiting for this 8/8 date. For the Robotaxi event. They were going to display, new capabilities, potentially even a new product. Again, there was a lot of speculation, but Elon responded back to Warren and, about the 8/8 date and said, requested what I think is an important design change to the front, and extra time allows us to show off a few other things. So it sounds like, again, I would assume that they're probably going to release a prototype of something. So it sounds like there's last minute changes, and they'll be able to include a couple new things. But what is the panel's thought on this? I mean, maybe it's not a whole lot, but I assume you all were waiting for this type of update as well, because there was rumors of it.
Yeah, I think a delay, especially how he phrased it, I think it makes sense. I don't see, there was 8/8 was great, but it wasn't necessary to August. It wasn't needed. You know what I mean? So plus, as we know, with possible court dates and stuff like that, it's good that he kind of moved the date. But I think anything that gives him more time to focus on other things, I think is awesome.
Alexandra or Jeff, any thoughts?
I can take it from here. I mean, I was a bit disappointed because, as you know, he had already acknowledged that I would have an invite. So obviously, me, good old organized crazy lady, got my flight, got my hotel, was all ready. So fair enough. I've canceled it now. It doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. It doesn't matter at all. The whole question is, when is it going to be? And I know Jeff has a theory, and I've been thinking about that theory overnight, and I think he may actually be right. So, Jeff, I let you go first.
Yeah, in the grand scheme of things, first off, delays are not good. I continue to hear sometimes in the community of almost like it's a good thing. It's not a good thing. But in retrospect, because again, the leader of the company set a date. He set a date of 8/8, and he wanted everything to converge on that date. Obviously, things didn't work out. But I think in the grand scheme of things, when you're thinking about, just even 2 years from now, you look back on this, if the event's in August or it's October, November, I don't think it's what we don't know what the new date is, by the way. So we shouldn't 100% speculate on that. But regardless, in hindsight, this won't be very meaningful given the size of this business that it will actually be. But in current present time, delays are not good, and just in general, they're not good to have. Now, delaying this, into Q4. Could put this in, and I share this same thought with Larry Goldberg as well, who brought this up too, that they, when he says it could be showing off a few extra things, it could be added functionality to the Cybercab or the Robotaxi, however you want to call it. The other thing that, they could be able to show are these new vehicles that are under development that were mentioned on the Q1 earnings call in April. And those vehicles should be within a quarter of production, and so that it may be an introduction of those too. It's possible. It's hard to say, but it would also be good timing for the company to show that they're going to have new vehicles at a lower price point. I believe that these things will be anywhere from $4,000 to $6,000 cheaper to build, and that would be good timing, especially if there's concern around, the IRA credit and how long that would survive into 2025. By the way, that won't be gone day one. It's a law. It's a U.S. law. But we'll talk more about that in a bit. But anyway, I think there's an opportunity for Tesla to show more. Again, it's a couple months later, so it could be added functionality to the vehicle, or it could be these additional vehicles that they're about to introduce.
Yeah, and I think your best guess was that it would be November-ish. And I thought actually November could be a good date because it would be after the elections. I think there's just so much happening now up to the elections that maybe there is just more, focus and possibility to do this in a more organized manner, and also know which administration will be incoming and adapt it to that fact.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I feel like November might be too crowded with the election. I feel like either early November or October or mid to like December, but who knows? Alexandra, not to put you on the spot, but is any legal updates on the court case and anything you want to inform us about? And
so the saga is going on. It's endless, this story. Remember, we have two levels now: the fees and whether the whole preliminary judgment she gave out in January should be reconsidered. So the fees, we had a hearing, and we have the transcript of that hearing. And I have the feeling she's very favorable to plaintiffs' attorneys, but that's always the case. When you read it, you're biased yourself. At least my case is always, I always have the feeling that it's bad for our side. And then I read that stuff into it. So we just have to wait. So the fee topic is now finished. We're just waiting for her judgment on the motion to reconsider her initial judgment. So that's what she said in January. That's what Tesla wants her to do. They have submitted their arguments. The plaintiff's attorney has submitted his, always the same crap. This is waste, and Delaware shouldn't reconsider any new facts when we're at this state. And I mean, they may be right. They may be legally right. It just doesn't make any sense in the current situation, but there we are. And so in that one, we're expecting today the defendants, meaning Tesla's response, and then we'll head into a hearing it's actually in 2 weeks, on August the 2nd, Friday, August the 2nd, will be the hearing on the fact that Tesla wants her to reconsider the whole case. And my hopes are very slim. I said it last time, but I mean, it's worth a try. And then what was also funny is not the right word, is they published yesterday the transcript. I didn't even put it out because it was, lots of blabber for nothing, but they published a transcript of a telephone conversation prior to that fee hearing, the big hearing 2 weeks ago. And so that was a telephone conversation between the judge and the two attorneys. And in that transcript, she goes, she obviously feared that crazy shareholders like us would show up and would make noise. And she wanted to make sure that Tesla had a paper prepared to give to shareholders, telling them that they have to shut up and that there are legal ways to submit your opinion, but certainly not by showing up in a courtroom and screaming. And obviously nobody of us did that, but it's funny that that was her big concern, because she kept going back and back to that. So that's how much influence we have. And obviously all of us are well polite, and we have written, that's the normal way of doing this, and we've written in mass. Nobody else has ever had so many letters going to a judge of the Chancery Court in Delaware, and I don't even think in any other business law case. And so we'll see how it now goes on. Still, I mean, we're still at least short months and probably even long months away from a judgment. Could be as late as end of the year, the judgment of this whole Tonetta case, and then it will go in appeal, and then we'll hang another year and a half in there. So it's just, I mean, I'll keep you updated, but it is such a long, useless, stupid story. It's crazy.
Okay. Well, maybe we won't do the weekly updates, but I think maybe just keep us in tune on any big updates, and then we can always swing back to it. But yeah, I think most importantly is, we got the resounding yes, and I think encouragement, hopefully, well, not clearly, but Elon, Tesla Legal, the whole Tesla squad, even the board, they all got reaffirmed that we backed them, from Alexandra and Amy's work, and really the community coming together. So, now it's just working out the fine print, it seems like. So, all right. And next week, I believe it's I forgot the exact date. I believe it's July
Tuesday.
23rd. Yeah, July 23rd will be the earnings call. So, Joe, I don't know if you want to share any of these top questions, but more importantly, I did want to get to, thoughts going into next week, any major call outs, things that you're looking for when it comes to the earnings.
Well, I will say off top, usually these questions are kind of like, come on, they're not going to answer that. But I mean, there's some really good ones here. Like they want to know an update for the Robotaxi event. When will be the first Robotaxi ride? I mean, that kind of goes along with that event, I imagine. So I don't even know why those are two separate questions. But I like the timeline for Giga Mexico question. I think that's pretty good. I know Brian went out there this week and made a really cool video about. But I don't think a lot of people realize is that a lot of that is rock, like pure rock in Mexico, like where they're building. So it looks like it's going to take a lot longer than what they thought. And as we know, it's not really Mexico that's delaying things. It's Tesla that's delaying things. So I thought that was pretty informative. So there's a few good questions on here. I don't know if anybody wants to take a stab at it.
Wow. Didn't realize that. That's insane. But yeah, as far as the panel goes, any thoughts on what Joe said, but more importantly, like what are you looking for towards next week? Like what's top of mind for you? Obviously, we know the delivery beat happened. And obviously probably, something that people were very top of mind was the Robotaxi event. So I think they have to provide some type of update on that. I don't think they can make it not clear. I think they'll probably provide an update.
Yeah, I think any guidance on the future of the business, something more definitive, like we will produce more cars and deliver more cars this year than the prior year. We have bottomed in gross margins. We believe they can't guarantee anything, but based on everything they've seen. And I also think they should clarify, Tesla's position on subsidies, because there's a lot of confusion. Again, the general just rancor out there is just like, one political party says, EVs are or this or that. And there's just a lot of confusion out there. So I think clarifying Tesla's position, regardless of candidate, that Tesla is the best established and set up car manufacturer in the world, regardless of what candidate is elected, I think is an important thing to put out there. And there's reasons behind that. So I think that's what I would be looking for. I think people are less and less focused on, is it 65 cents of earnings or 55 cents of earnings? I think what they really want to hear from the company is that we've bottomed, in EPS, and we've got a plan for growth here. And this is how we're going to do it. A combination of these newer vehicles and a combination of our autonomy business, which honestly resets the business over the next, call it 12 to 18 months eventually.
Yeah, I wasn't very impressed with the questions on Say so far. I found it actually funny that the shorter the questions, the more vote it gets. That's quite surprising. But there are two questions I found were interesting to look at, and they haven't been upvoted yet enough. One was from Larry Goldberg, Tesla Larry, about how the performance guarantees in the energy contracts are monetized, with what delay they're getting it, how is the success rate and all that. I think that's a very interesting question. And that brings me actually to what I'm going to watch most on Tuesday, which is this time probably less the retail questions, especially if they stay the way they are at the moment. I mean, of course, I listen to it, but I don't think they're going to answer much of that. It's much more the analyst questions. I want to see whether they have shifted from a car company questions to an energy company question, and and obviously all the AI and subsequent questions, and that would be for me a real important thing, because I think we're at a shift where institutional investors are coming back into the stock. I think actually today they're leaving. I think today was a date where they know their earnings are coming on Tuesday, and they're just pulling back and see what's going to happen on Tuesday. But in general, they're coming back to a more neutral stance, where they were on an underweight stance for months and months and months. So that is what drove most of the upswing we've seen these past couple of months. And I want to see how much bullish, they're still not completely neutral, but how much more they can go into the actually bullish territory, and that will come from those analyst questions. So while I'm usually not very keen on them, I do believe they have at the moment a high influence in speaking to fund managers, in speaking to institutional investors about their recommendations on Tesla. They're setting new price targets and all that, and that will be crystallized in those questions. I also want to do a little pitch for myself, if you allow. I'm invited, and I hope it materializes on Wednesday morning, 8 o'clock on Bloomberg Live in their technology segment at 8 o'clock Pacific, 11 o'clock Eastern, exactly on the earnings call.
Big time. Doing it again. I feel like because you've posted videos in the past of
I did. That was about 20 years ago, and here I'm back.
Well, you're back in it again.
It's funny, and so watch. Let's see how it goes. It's supposed to be a 5 to 10 minute segment on the earnings call. I try to do my best, and I think it's great that retail is getting invited. You know that Sawyer was invited to Last Call, Brian Sullivan. Unfortunately, that show yesterday got canned, so that's not going to be a show where we have entry anymore. Brian is going to be recycled in other CNBC segments, but that's going to be replaced by the Shark Tank again, and which is a bit of a shame. I found it was a nice show, a bit more normal show than those are just concentrated on the market. Anyway, so I think it's a nice thing we're slipping into those more traditional channels again. Not that I want to give them too much credit, but it's nice that they recognize us.
I think you bring up this, of course, and a few of the others have mentioned energy online on X and stuff like that, and in a few of their statements. So it seems like that shift is happening. It seems like they are. I mean, as we see the numbers, it's really undeniable at this point, right? Like they have to add it. They have to add it into their spreadsheets. They have no choice. Like, I mean, if they don't, it's just like, you're like, who are you kidding? But I mean, we got like 4 billion waiting, like right now. It's like, yeah, it's a substantial amount to the budget for what Tesla's doing, and to ignore the energy side is going to be kind of a fool's errand at this point. So I'm interested in seeing that too. That's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I think for me, I think everyone made some major call outs. I do think, Jeff, you made a really good call out on, as we head into this election, they need to continue to just reaffirm that they make the best vehicles. It's the best choice for you if you're spending $35,000 on a new car or whatever it may be, especially with the tax credits. But at the end of the day, like, there's no other car that you should buy. It should be a Tesla. And I think that no matter, heading into this election, whether, Trump, we'll get into this, EV mandate and stuff, but no matter what, happens with policies, whether you consider gas or electric, these are the best vehicles. They, are the best cost per mile over a 5-year period versus a Toyota Corolla and a Model 3. They're the safest vehicles, low maintenance, and it's one of those things that everyone should consider it, or at least drive it, at least get in it, go experience it, and then make your decision. And then with autonomy, I think again that's all the stuff that I think Jeff, again, I agree with you on. And then I do think it'll be important, just in the short term, again, because yes, we know this is an AI robotics company. I do think, and I don't know if Jeff or Alexandra, Joe, you think, I feel like they need a guide for the year on like where they're probably going to land with vehicles. I mean, we're pretty much through, 2.5 quarters almost. And it's just kind of like, I think they need a guide in like, where is this going to land? And then obviously the energy side of the business. I mean, I feel like every week, maybe it's every like 2 weeks, I see Sawyer drop this huge bomb about like some $1 billion contract that they've just landed. So I'm really, excited about the energy business. Again, this is probably more short term just because we know Robotaxi and all that other stuff. We know that the Robotaxi and stuff is still kind of like long term or a little bit further out. So those are the things that I think I'm looking forward to the most. All right. So I feel like, Jeff, I'm going to pass this kind of to you. I did put there was one statement that Trump did make last night. And again, this wasn't, I'm not going to say, this is one thing I was going to state. It wasn't necessarily shared out of context. I was just trying to get this, but Trump did say something after this, but either way, he did say, I will end the electric vehicle mandate on day one. And so, Elon responded, a surprising number of people think that Tesla survives on subsidies. That is true of our competitors, but not of Tesla. And I do want to say to Trump's, credit, he did say that he loves EVs, but he just wants people to choose. So, but yeah, I'll pass it to Jeff. I think you can speak to this and just kind of set in some of the reality.
Yeah, thanks. I first off, I think people need to like just relax for a minute. Like you can support one candidate over another. That's fine. That's not this conversation. This conversation is this election's going to go in one of two directions. And if you kind of take this, what people are believing this is like this extreme view, and you put it into context, I think there's so much misinformation out there. I thought I can help clarify it. So one, the mandate that's being referred to as this White House EV mandate, which I think is 56%, would require them from an emissions perspective for U.S. auto manufacturers to have 56% of their fleet converted to EV by, I think, 2032, and maybe 40, some high 40s by 44% by 2030. So there's just basically this gradual step up, which basically means like today, these auto manufacturers would need to start, converting their portfolio and be doing more and more EV vehicles, which they actually are. But it's what's confusing is they're actually not installing the capacity for the imminent coming years to achieve these levels. So they're basically betting that the election will go one way or another, and you've seen them pull back on their capacity. I don't think people are talking about that, but that's what's actually happening. So you see product announcements, but you don't see the capacity going in, and that's evident by the GM announcement on 2025, where they said they're not going to even install the capacity for 1 million units. So back to this, when President Trump or former President Trump says he would end the mandate on day one, he's talking about this future mandate for the percent of the fleet that would need to be EV, not talking about the $7,500 IRA credit or the battery manufacturer tax credit. Now, they could go after that too, but that is a law passed by Congress. That's not something the White House can just strike on day one. They would have to work with the House of Representatives and the Senate to have a new law. You can't just put an executive order out that's antithetical to an existing passed law out there. So I just want to clarify that. You can't strike down the IRA on day one. But if the House and the Senate were moved all in one direction, to Republican, they could work on a new bill. and dramatically altering what the IRA is, or changing it dramatically. But now let's talk about Tesla and Tesla's position. Tesla is working on vehicles. You have to put this all in the context, because there's a lot out there I don't agree with. People think Tesla's sales are automatically going to go lower. What Tesla is doing is Tesla's preparing, and they've done this for the inception of their company, is working on COGS reductions through scale and working on COGS reductions through their design of their product. So there are new vehicles that are being designed that will be of a lower price point that would be coming. Elon talked about this in the first half of the coming year. So that's going to be timed perfectly. Number one. Number two, EVs are continuing to get more scale. You see the cost per kilowatt hour for batteries drifting lower and lower based on each battery type. That's going to continue as scale moves from ICE to EV. So the input materials are going to be lower. Three, the interest rate backdrop. You're going to start seeing interest rates drop probably in the fourth quarter of this year, and that's going to continue through the following year. So if you take and you just look at this on a cost basis, I believe Tesla is going to produce these new interim vehicles before the next generation platform. They'll probably on the order of $4,000 to $6,000 less in COGS. And if interest rates come down to more of the nominal inflation rate, so instead of being up at 5.25%, they come down to closer to 3%, you're going to knock a few $1,000s off more of the lifetime value of financing the vehicle. So you take those few $1,000s through interest rates coming down, and you take the new interim vehicles that Tesla are designing. Tesla is positioning their next set of products to basically be the equivalent of what the IRA reduction would be today. And so they're actually working to eat into that. And then they'll just keep going lower. There's more work to do. There's more scale. We're at the very early innings of scale in EV. So in summary, the mandate they're talking about is percent of the fleet in later years. Yes, Tesla can't be the only auto manufacturer that survives. They may be the only U.S. manufacturer that survives, but there are others in the world that would survive in that scenario. Two, the IRA credit and the mandate are two different things. Three, Tesla's focused on scale and new vehicles at a lower price point. Four, you have the Fed funds rate coming down, and those two coupled together will put product at that price point that's affordable for people in the coming year.
And I want to add one point that he said last night. And please correct me, Jeff, because I only listened to it once. So I may not be 100% correct. Trump discussed on the Chinese, obviously mainly BYD at the moment, setting up factories in Mexico. And he thinks that is with the aim to flood the US with those cars without having tariffs. And he said he would then put tariffs on those cars as well. Is that what it was, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure about last night, but he's talked about this in general. You're correct. And this is the right thing to do. I've been talking about this for over a year. You can't have this situation where NAFTA is utilized as basically instead of the dumping ground being direct to the U.S., it's Mexico, and they just drive over the border. So there would have to be a tariff structure between the two. And yes, there's a free trade agreement. Yes, we're under this new NAFTA, but the purpose of the tariffs are basically around local protectionism. And what people in the U.S. are just, most people are just not aware of, is that, and I've done business in multiple countries for decades, this has been happening in other countries, much greater than the U.S., by the way, for decades. And we were not doing this, and our manufacturing was going, whether it's over to Asia or in parts of South America and so forth, and we were the only ones not doing any significant level of local protectionism as it relates to trade. Now you can debate back and forth. I think there's a way to use this and lever it for a better deal between both countries and to actually create a trade agreement. But until you get to that point, you can't have this ability. Right now, basically, China can produce an EV for somewhere on the order and sell it for even $12,000 to $15,000, and right now the U.S. is about double that. So there's been through multiple reasons. By the way, they did a good job of actually working on their supply chain for the last decade. and through government subsidies, they have a method to produce something that we can't produce competitively right now in the U.S. So hence the need for this. This could be its own show and a much longer debate. But yeah, he would have to cut off what's going on in Mexico. By the way, the other people don't realize is when they see a GM or Ford vehicle on the road in the U.S., they think it's built here. And 1 in 3 GM and Ford vehicles you see on the road in the U.S. are built in Mexico.
That is correct. And actually the same happens in Europe with BYD. BYD building currently a huge plant in Hungary, hoping that they can then use the Hungarian plant to flood the European market. And the Europeans are scratching their heads at the moment as well. So, I mean, this is all huge geopolitics and comes at a moment where it's obviously going to be discussed a lot. But, I think the one thing we should make clear, and I'm sure all people who study Tesla will understand that very much. There may be a perception now out there that actually Elon is doing the wrong thing by supporting Trump. That's not my subject. But what Trump is saying is not anti-Tesla. That's the one thing I want people to take home with them, because Tesla can very well survive without the IRA. First of all, it won't go, as Jeff explained, from day one. But even if it would go, this is a much bigger problem for other car makers. And Trump is not against EVs. He just wants free choice for everybody and not something that is imposed and subsidized. And so I do believe that Elon stands behind all that, but that's not for me to judge. But one thing I want to reassure everybody is no matter which administration comes in, I don't think it will have a negative effect on Tesla. And I actually, personally think that a change in administration may actually be very positive for Tesla, and I'm not the only one saying so. There is their knives going from any TV channel to the next one to support the same idea.
Yeah, just to add to that, one more quick thing is both sides, both party platforms are going for a particular set of votes. And so the Democratic Party is clearly going after the union leaders. They want that endorsement. They have that endorsement. And they're clearly going after that because you get in Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin, and parts of Illinois obviously are in that as well, but it's firmly Democratic. So they're clearly going after those votes. The Republican Party has kind of turned into more of this party of like the working man, woman, and they're going after those votes as well. And both the Democratic side obviously has this push in terms of green and clean new energy and so forth, and so they think they can get there through subsidizing it. And the Republican side is basically like, hey, we're not going to cram this one type of vehicle down your throat. We're going to let you have choice. And by the way, they're not being produced profitably here again, except for Tesla anyway. So they're both trying to get at this union vote and this belt of voters in through different methods. But Trump is basically, he said a number of things. He's almost said everything. If you think about, if you take all of his statements, almost said everything. But in the end, I think an administration that's not constantly investigating the CEO of Tesla, for various things, and through lawfare, and then removing contracts through Starlink and so forth, I just think the resistance that gets removed from that is probably going to be better for the company overall. And then for all the other reasons we mentioned earlier about Tesla and their ability to not only survive, but thrive without subsidies.
Joe, go for it.
No, I was just going to echo what Jeff said in the last part of that. It's true. We'll probably hear Tesla and Elon mentioned way more than we have in the last 4 years. And that's, dependent on how this election goes. But one thing is to think about, and I really hope that what Jeff said hits home for a lot of people. Like, this isn't a day one decision. This isn't something that can be a law that can be like just taken away. I mean, people are making these posts about get your $7,500 now before it goes away. And it's like people love to go off the deep end, like right away. And social media has a way of amplifying like negative news over positive news. So it'll be, it's just wild.
Yeah, I think, one thing I did want to say, and obviously we're not here to get, tell you to which way to vote. It's just more of to inform and also to potentially, which is going to kind of lead into my next question, which is going to be, how will this, if Trump does win, not that we have a crystal ball, but, how will this benefit or not benefit Tesla? I mean, for me, I think, Jeff, you really hit the nail on the head with the hammer. It's, not just this constant interrogation or people just literally like trying to put this, probe this company constantly and block it. And I think that it is interesting that, that you made that comment about the votes and, how each party is obviously trying to claim to a certain vote. But I think a lot of the inputs that you gave were very helpful, because I think that that's what people, or the narrative that will be told by the media and others, that, Trump is against EVs and they'll just do their best to spin that. But if you take it for what it is, it really actually will impact more of the competitors than Tesla itself. And Elon has said, well, it's, he did make comments 2 years ago in my interview, which I'm not going to go into, but he has made recent comments, and please keep me honest here, where he's like, actually the subsidies, like if you remove that, that's actually going to help Tesla right now, because then what's going to happen is probably the competitors, and again, keep me honest here, I believe, people, their cars will be less affordable, right? And it's just I think Tesla has options where they can continue to play with the pricing and continue to make their cars cheaper, even without the tax credit. Because of the fact that,
I was going to add something to that, John. Oh, sorry, go ahead. I had a timing issue. I apologize. There's one really important thing about this $7,500 tax credit. From a first principles perspective, if you look at how a hybrid is designed, it is inefficient. It has two propulsion platforms inside of the product, and they basically have something on the order of a 7 or 8 kilowatt hour battery in a car versus 10 times that in your kind of mid-range EV. So that 7.5 kilowatt hour battery is getting the same tax credit, $7,500 tax credit, to the consumer that the EV is getting. So if all the subsidies were to go away, both for those vehicles and for EVs, from a first principles perspective, EVs would win out if they're designed properly, and Tesla is designing them properly. This $7,500 credit has propped and propelled hybrids up, and when that goes away, I think it's not going to be a good thing for that side of the business. So I think it's just really important to understand that. And during this whole time, things don't just stand still. The cost per kilowatt hour of a at the cell level in some areas, because it's oversupplied right now, is like at $40 to $50. That used to be triple that just a couple of years ago. So things are moving and converging in the direction. And then basically as EVs grow globally and ICE declines, the ICE percent utilization declines. So it actually becomes more, it actually starts their ceiling, their fixed costs start creating it on top of themselves. So there's a number of dynamics here at play. I think the IRA credit helped at a certain point in time, but I think it helped more of the wrong stuff versus helping EVs. So anyway, I think it's just really important to call out that I think Tesla is positioned really well based on the types of vehicles they're doing and their future roadmap going forward. You're mute, John. Sorry.
I was like, why isn't anybody saying anything?
Yeah, no. How any other thoughts on potentially how the Trump administration, would help Tesla or not help Tesla? All good if there's no more thoughts. Okay. So I think one other update too that I know probably, well, maybe it's not as big of a deal for Joe. I don't want to put Joe on the spot because he'll always remind me of his car before the Cybertruck, but driving myself has been painful. So in my Cybertruck, so this update was big. 12.5 hopefully comes with the full self-driving. So I know I'm really excited about that. I'm really excited to test it out, to see what it's capable of, and to start getting miles into the system to train the system. So Joe, any thoughts on when you saw this update?
So I'll take a different stance on this because I had a 2013 Model S. I could care less about FSD on a regular basis, right? But I think this needs to happen for October or November or whatever's going to happen in the future, because I do not think you can drop that future vehicle, like you did with the Cybertruck and not have FSD on it already. So I think this is huge in that regard, that it sets up what's potentially going to be the future for the Robotaxi or cyber robo fleet or whatever. So that's what I took from this, is that they are trying to nail down, like, we see it for the current vehicles, but I think what they're pinpointing is future vehicles and looking at Robotaxi and going forward. So I think this is big for that, because you can't drop like 1,000 vehicles without it having that. And I think that's the plan, is to hit the ground running with that fleet.
Yeah, I do think that it's important, because this will, because the Cybertruck is such a different beast than even the Model X or any of the sexy lineups. So I think this will be also a good test for, the new build that they have on the neural network, which, I am excited to have a lot of data just thrown on that and just see how it does. Because in the earlier days of FSD on the X, there would be times it would get really close to the curb and stuff. So yeah, I'm looking forward towards that. Yeah. Other big update. I feel like we talked about this last week, but I do think that there was some data that came out. I think that's why this was highlighted. But in the month of May, I don't think this is old news, but it was definitely shared out this week. But it's crazy because, I think they started deliveries at the end of November, and then they really didn't start delivering more until January. So it is pretty crazy that the Cybertruck now is the best-selling truck in the U.S. I think it was Farzad who said the world, because he said that trucks are really only sold in the U.S. So you could say that this is the best-selling truck in the world. EV truck.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
EV truck. But yeah, so, exciting things happening for the Cybertruck, but, it's crazy that this is already selling more than the Ford and the Rivian combined.
And the Ford starting price, John, is half of what the Tesla Cybertruck Foundation is. So it's approaching double the volume at double the price.
Yeah. And we don't know when they're going to share this information yet, but I do know at some point they'll stop making the Foundation series. And then I think you'll continue to see, this go up, as I know a lot of people are waiting for this.
Didn't he say at the shareholder meeting that in Q3, so in the current quarter, they will start the non-Foundation series? Do we have a precise timing or not?
He did say that. I just don't know if that's realistically going to happen. But yeah, from my understanding, people are still taking delivery of the Foundation series. And no one has, at least, I haven't seen anything where people can configure a non-Foundation series yet.
Correct.
Well, Tesla, since the shareholders meeting, put out communications that said that they would be building the Foundation series through the end of this year. I'll go look for that. I'll share it if I'll find it.
Correct. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So I think what happened.
So that means for you, they're not selling others before the end of the year.
Delivering, yeah. So I think what happened is since the shareholder meeting and that point in time that communication went out, there was a realization of, like, in order to go non-Foundation, our COGS would have to be here, and they may not be where they want. My take is it may not be where they want it to be yet. So.
Yeah, that makes sense, because obviously you all know I'm waiting for my non-Foundation because I'm cheap. So I just don't want to sell my shares, or too many of my shares. But there we go.
Yeah, it's not for everyone. Go for it, Jeff.
No, I'm sorry, John. I must have a timing. I would just say, like, if you look at the bill of material, what's in the order configuration for a foundation series versus non-foundation, it's not that you're just paying $20K more. You're actually getting real value of things, in that bill of material. So you should look at it. I mean, it may be a couple $1,000s more in the early time frame, but what Tesla did is they took very, very high margin accessories and obviously high margin software, and they put it into that order configuration for foundation series. So to offset the lower margins on building the base vehicle. But it's not that you're just paying $20K more. You're actually getting FSD, you're getting, the larger tires, you're getting all these things that are at a, greater value, but that's not for everyone.
I hear you.
Yeah. And very Tesla fashion Thursday nights are when they drop all of the dimes. So they dropped this yesterday. I know that they increased the price, I think, on the Model S and the Model X up by 2,000, but they did release, the fact that they continue to make these Model Ys, really their cars, as affordable as possible. So, to get 2% for a car financing, or even a car lease, like all this other stuff is pretty insane. What are you guys thinking as they are making these adjustments and really just pulling pricing levers? Is there anything that's sticking out to you? I mean, this isn't necessarily anything new per se, but this is just stuff.
Well, it is new to the sense that only last quarter they started doing the 0.99, which obviously was limited in time. Now 1.99 is still very competitive. Now you have to understand that other OEMs have their own financing part. So Ford has a branch of their company that is doing only the financing. So for them, it is easier than for Tesla to do the accounting between the two, because what usually happens is a company sources money from the capital markets by issuing a bond. They have usually a quite well diversified exposure to the yield curve over years, and then that's how they package their attractive offers, because it is by arbitraging the yield curve to the current offer, but also by taking a loss, obviously, on the differential between the current rate in the market and the preferential rate they're proposing. Now, Tesla doesn't do any of this. And that's actually one of the things I want to hear on Tuesday as well. And we'll see in the 10Q, which is that how are these loans now backed? How is this financing backed? Is this an increase on loans that Tesla is taking on their own books, which Elon had said a year ago they don't want to do? They don't want to have more consumer debt on their books. And it has gradually decreased, not a lot decreased, but it hasn't increased at all. It has gradually decreased. Or are they now taking them on their own books and then just spreading the loss over the time of the loan? Or second, and I think more realistic option is they're sourcing the loans in the market. What do I know? Wells Fargo, whoever else who is behind it. Wells Fargo gives them a 6% rate. They're proposing it at 199, and Tesla takes the hit of those 4%. And then the question is, usually it is also spread over the time of the loan, but it could also be a balloon initial payment to offset the difference. So from a accounting standpoint, it's an interesting exercise, and we'll see actually next week's earnings. It won't be a huge number. It won't make any much difference on the overall earnings, but I'm interested in whether Tesla wants to do that more often, whether they're even thinking about having their own financing branch. I do believe with interest rates probably going lower with a change in administration, it's probably not necessary, but who knows? But anyway, it is obviously a shift in overall policy for financing, because it's the first time this year that Tesla has introduced it. They have last year slowly tipped their toes into financing on their own books. So let's see what's coming out of it.
I have a question for you, Alexandra. It's great that we can tap your expertise in this area. Is the thought from, and this is just, I'm asking your opinion, is the thought from Tesla is like, look, we've hit the peak in the rate cycle. We've also hit kind of the peak in terms of, this shift in this massive shift in vehicle pricing from its peak to kind of where it is today, and everything's stabilized. So you're not going to be losing value. And what's the play on this of like, let's do this financing deal again, probably shared with a bank, as you said, and then maybe a year from now or so, whatever, year and a half, go back in and then refinance that debt at a much lower rate?
That would be ideal if they would do it themselves, right? You then just play arbitrage on the yield curve. You look for the lowest point in the yield curve that you want to optimize. You do a loan on that, and then in a year you refinance and do that. That's how the GMs of this world, or the Fords of this world, or the Volkswagen manage their financial side. Tesla's never done that. Elon was very outspoken because he had that question after the shareholder meeting 2023, that he doesn't want to do gambling on that side. He doesn't want to have consumer debt on the books more than the necessary, and that they're doing this really very, they did it a little bit, but you had the feeling it was more on the S's and the X's, and it was for certain loans where it was just not competitive what they got from the banks. At the moment, I don't think it's a vulnerability on Tesla's side. It's good and bad, like always, everything in life. On one side, it's great they don't have to deal with consumer debt, and they don't have to deal with all these arbitraging, because it needs a whole team being dedicated to managing this on a day-to-day basis, because it's a whole thing of financial arbitraging. On the other side, it's a missed opportunity, but a missed opportunity that comes with risks, right? Whether you want to take those and not. And knowing how Elon manages the financial aspect of Tesla, and we actually like that, right? We like that there's so little debt. We like that it's so lean and mean. Not sure that going into the consumer debt market, going into this financial arbitraging is somewhere they want to go. I just don't believe so. Just think about where Tesla's revenue will be sooner or later. It will be software revenues, right? Where you don't have this issue with hardware financing at all anymore. So you want to build up a whole field of that. So we're in this intermediary phase where interest rates were too high, affordability was an issue, and measures had to be found. And that's why I still strongly believe they're taking the hit between the 6% that the market gives them and the 2% or the 199 they're proposing to the clients, and they're going to stretch it over a while, but they're just going to, linearly depreciate it, and that's going to be it. Now, I may be wrong, and may tell you next Tuesday, once we've seen the 10Q, that actually it is increasing on our own books, and they may actually move into yield arbitraging. It's a measurable risk, and at the moment the debt, I think it's $1 billion that they have in car debt, car financing on their books, if I remember the number, which is obviously nothing compared to the numbers of Tesla. So they have a huge number that they could increase it, and it would still be very, very reasonable. I doubt they're doing it. We'll see on Tuesday, because these are the defining quarters. The one that we're seeing now, the next one coming out, whether this financing is something that they want to pursue.
Thank you.
One thing, so I'm going to show this chart, and I think we can kind of end with this, but it actually kind of goes back to potentially, I think Trump did make the statement about how, when he'd mentioned the EV mandate was essentially like, I don't know if keep me wrong, but he had mentioned that like legacy auto is pretty much doomed or has been doomed based on this EV mandate. And here's a chart, of U.S. EV registrations. I think the my question is that even with the Trump administration, I don't think the thing is like one administration, they're in for 4 years, especially because this would be Trump's second term. I don't think anyone could potentially save what these legacy auto companies have really set up for themselves and done to themselves, right? And again, not to get into politics. I mean, that's should the administration step in and all this other stuff. But he alluded to the fact that legacy auto is doomed, especially in the U.S. But I don't think that there's a whole lot. I mean, when you even look at this chart, and when you, again, we've talked a lot about this, how Tesla makes these amazing vehicles, and you drive a Tesla and you even own one, typically you won't go to, when you look at the overall ownership experience, the safety, the cost per mile, all that stuff there, it doesn't always make sense to go back to anything else. Right. But what did you guys, what do you think about that? What do you, is there anything that really maybe this administration the potential future administration could do to actually change or help these legacy auto from like something like, you know, setting themselves up for doom anyways.
The best help that they could give them is to restrict entry of a country that has a definitive advantage over them right now, which would be China. And so the current administration, to their credit, has already put, I believe it's up to or 100%
100%.
on, yeah, on China-made EVs. So that is helping them in the interim. The question for legacy auto is, now that they've had 1 to 2 design cycles in EV, have they figured it out by like 2026 or 2027? And will they be able to produce a profitable EV below, you know, $35,000, $40,000? And if the answer is yes, then the tariffs that a presidential administration can put on can help them. If the answer is no, and I believe the answer still is no at the current time, then, you know, it's not going to be good for them. There's this antithetical thinking of like, if you don't have, you know, these incentives around EVs, that the other propulsion systems will just do better. And the answer is the capacity globally. Remember, this is a system of suppliers. This is a system of workers and so forth. And that capacity is moving away from ICE and towards EV. And as that utilization sinks, and as that capacity utilization sinks, and those resources are moving over to EVs, and the cost per EV input costs are going down, this is just going to happen. It's inevitable. I think Elon has said it's inevitable. And I've studied this before in other industry transitions, and I'm studying this right now. And I don't think there's much they can do. But again, I think what a presidential can and should do is they should protect trade, and they should protect localization of manufacturing. So if you're going to sell product here, you have to build it here. And some of these countries that can compete wonderfully in their own home country and produce at lower cost with their lower cost labor and so forth, most of them cannot replicate that in a high dollar, high cost, area like in the US. It just, they haven't figured that out. Tesla has actually figured that out, how to build vehicles here, design and build them here, and be profitable doing it. And they're shifting their model away more from hardware margins to software margins faster than all this competition. So people think like Chinese are going to leapfrog, Tesla, for example, and they're certainly, from a hardware margins perspective, they're catching up rapidly, and they will. But then Tesla's going to get this multi-year lead again on the software side.
Yeah, no, I think that's very, very helpful information. I was trying to, I'm having a hard time. There was one person from the audience asking something live on X that I'm trying to wait, guys. So if BYD gets here with a $14,000 cheap Mexico vehicle, the Tesla Model 2 will need the $7,500 incentive to be competitive for the low-cost buyer.
No. First of all, you don't construct the same $14,000 car in Mexico than you construct in China. They're completely different conditions. And the second is, as we said earlier, the way I think the future administration, if it changes, wants to handle that is put different tariffs in for those cars before they can enter the US market as well. So at the moment, why do we see so little Chinese cars, or nearly no Chinese EVs in the US? It's because there is this huge tariff on it, and they would not be able to compete. And the same will happen with the Mexico-built BYD. The second thing is that the BYD is just not comparable to a Tesla, right? You always will have cars in different price segments. You can't say just because the cheapest car is around, and it won't be 14,000, but let's keep with that example. The cheapest EV is 14,000. That doesn't mean it is as good as the 25,000 and as the 30,000 as at 40,000, right? There's so much more to the EV, but also obviously to the software aspect of it. So at the moment, I just feel like we still have Tesla investors that are so concentrated on the car market they should all take a step back and do their homework on software, because that is going to be the distinguishing factor sooner or later. That's going to be the main revenue bringer for Tesla, and concentrating on comparison between cheap models that will exist all over the world. And this one is just it's not helpful at all. I just wanted to add one last comment to what is happening at OEMs in the EV field. Do know that yesterday or the day before it was that GM's Meikai, who was the main person in charge of battery, they resigned because they had hired Kurt Kelty. Kurt Kelty is a Tesla veteran for batteries. So when you have this feeling they're all stagnating, yes, they're still building at much too high prices. They're not making any money on their EVs at the moment, but they are investing into the future. And it also comes obviously by people who have left Tesla and are spreading their knowledge now in those OEMs. I'm not happy that people are leaving Tesla, but it is obviously a good thing that these OEMs want to build up and want to improve. And I think if we look closely and not just on CNBS and you know what we usually hear, there is encouraging stuff happening at Ford and at GM. It's tough for them. I mean, I really feel for them, and they've made many mistakes, and they should actually reach out to Tesla to cooperate rather than trying to do lots of it by themselves. But I do wish them the best, and I don't think any administration, whichever it's going to win in November, is going to slow them down. They all want them to succeed, and we should as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also want to let that person on X know that the Model Y is outselling all of China's vehicles, even the $11,000 vehicle that BYD has. So yeah, I think they need to really look at the sales of what Tesla's doing in China to really think about that comment. But I mean, Tesla is just a behemoth, and their manufacturing prowess and the homologation process of the safety that Tesla's included in these vehicles is so far ahead of everybody else that I don't see that being any type of issue. And along with what Alexandra said about just looking towards the future with all these other companies, it's about the next 5 to 10 years, right? We're thinking of it like this year and next year or whatever, but GM has to get to 2030. They have to think about that. They have to look forward to that. And if they need to hire ex-Tesla employees to do that, then kudos to them. I mean, Tesla can't do it alone. We know that. And to like vote against that or even try to hype up against like the fall of all these other companies is just not within the mission. It just doesn't make any sense. So I'm all for it. Whatever they can do to help save themselves and help move the mission forward, it's about time.
All right. So one question I did want to ask, and we'll end with this, and I don't know if this is so from Cash App. So sorry if I'm pronouncing the name wrong, but when do you guys think that FSD revenue will be on the financial statements? I feel at this point, Wall Street will open their eyes for real.
Not soon. I mean, I don't have the feeling that they're gonna. I mean, first of all, I don't think at the moment they are considerable yet. They may give us an update on whether the take rate has increased after that 3 months. And honestly, I don't expect it to be huge. I think people tried it and want to make sure that they actually subscribe to the model once it is fully functional. So 12.5 later, whatever it's going to be. So I don't expect it to be separated and segregated and included anytime soon. Of course, as soon as the whole Robotaxi model is up, then yes, but I don't have the feeling that the FSD take rate and financials will be published before that.
Yeah, human nature is very funny. Everybody likes to see these things, these self-driving vehicles on movies and TV screens, but when it comes to real life, people get kind of scared of knowing that robots and self-driving cars exist. So the take rate is one thing, but doing the party trick for your family and friends is another thing. So I think you have people that like to do that sort of thing, but it's until it's fully laid out, I think it's going to be a while before that shows up. in any meaningful way.
Yeah, and
Well,
I predict
love how
Tesla
we're
will
doing
do. Oh, sorry, I was going to
Oh,
say
go
I'll
ahead.
predict just quickly. Tesla will do another free trial as the software as the system advances, because as Elon said, they actually need more interventions, and the way to get more interventions is to massively increase the amount of people that are using it. So I think you'll see. I don't know for sure, but I think you may see another trial coming.
Well, that's awesome. I think this is one of the first ones like where we're literally ending with a live Q&A. I think we've done it in the past, but yeah, we'll just wanted to quickly end. So if you are free next week, come to the X Takeover. We would love to have you. We have some amazing speakers. We have amazing vendors to come and patronize, some great food, an awesome kids zone, an amazing light show happening on Friday night with the first ever live performance synchronized Tesla light show ever. So DJ Ravi's going to be there. We have a ride and drive. We're going to be doing the first big meetup at the new San Luis Obispo Sales and Service Center for Tesla. So, you can also test drive the full sexy lineup. I know they'll have a Cybertruck on display. Obviously, we'll have the showcase of the Cybertrucks, but I don't think they'll be doing test drives for the Cybertruck. But yeah, we'll have a bunch of customized Teslas, super modified, a whole showcase of EVs as well, like Lucids and other Rivians, along with a whole showcase of Cybertrucks. So go to xtakeover.com. We are looking forward to seeing you. I know everyone on this panel here will be making an appearance in various ways. I know Jeff and Alexandra will be on the Cyber Bulls panel with Herbert and Gally. And then Joe will be emceeing, and I will be up there doing a couple of interviews. So it should be good. We look forward to seeing you next week, and have a good week, everyone. One thing just a quick announcement, we will not be meeting next Friday because we will be setting up for this event. So we will catch you guys probably in 2 weeks. So thanks again for supporting the podcast. We will see you guys all next week in San Luis Obispo. Stay safe, and we will see you hopefully at the X Takeover.